Ciao, Claudia.
Hi, Anna.
Great to see you today.
It's my pleasure.
So, today my guest is Claudia D'Ambrosio. She's a research director at CNRS and an adjunct professor at École Polytechnique in France. She is also the head of the International Academic and Research Chair, Integrated Urban Mobility. Her research specialty is mathematical optimization with a focus on mixed integer nonlinear programming. During her entire career, she was involved both in theoretical and applied research projects. She was awarded the EURO Doctoral Dissertation Award for her Ph.D. thesis and the second Prix Robert Faure Award granted by the ROADEF Society. Claudia published many papers in highly prestigious journals such as the SIAM Journal on Optimization, Mathematical Programming, Transportation Science, to name a few. She also serves as associate editor for the EURO Journal on Computational Optimization, Optimization Methods and Software, Optimization and Engineering, and 4OR. Claudia, grazie mille. I'm so happy that you're here. How are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good too. Looking forward to having this nice conversation with you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really honored to be one of your guests.
The pleasure is mine. So let's start. Claudia, you were born in 1980 in Italy, but from which part of the country are you from?
I'm from Rimini, which is a city on the coast, on the east coast, in the same region as Bologna. So you might have heard of Rimini already in the past because actually you had a guest from Rimini who is Roberto Roberti.
Yes.
And Rimini is not very far from Maria Battarra's city, so Riccione. So we are there is a little cluster of optimizer in that region, which is called the Romagna.
Excellent. Tell me about your family background.
So my family is partially from the north and partially from the south. So my dad is from the south and moved to Rimini when he was 20, more or less. He used to be a topographer. And then more recently, when I was a kid, he created a company that produces software. And my mom, when I was a kid, she decided to stay at home, and he's a housewife.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're both retired.
Right. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have a younger sister. Yeah, she's 4 years younger than me.
Okay. So you mentioned that your dad had this company, and he was selling software. Didn't he used to code?
Yeah, he used to code a little bit. So this is it can be surprising that from being a topographer, he became he created a company in programming. But actually, when he was a topographer, he started coding a bit for making his computations. So it's like calculations, etc., that he needed for work. At the beginning, it was just with a programmable scientific calculator. And then you realized that you needed more complex computations, etc. And so he bought a computer and he started to program a little bit. But I think it was the 70s, 80s, probably. So then, like from that point on, he continued a little bit program, and then at some point he hired a programmer to help him, and this is how the idea of creating a company for selling software was born.
Very interesting. Do you remember the computer that he had at that time?
So he told me that it was a Commodore, but he can't remember the model, but he still reminds that it was very expensive, so 80 million liras.
It should have been quite expensive.
Yeah, at that point it was quite expensive.
So do you think that the fact of being exposed to a computer at a very young age had any influence later in your life?
Yeah, for sure. Computers started to be less expensive, so like cheaper, he also bought a computer for home, and I was exposed to computer. I started playing, of course, with computers when I was like more or less a teenager, I would say, or even a little bit earlier. And then, yeah, what follows probably depends also on this. So I really like the computers, and then I started programming. Actually, when in college, I started programming in a language that is very old, that is called Pascal. I don't know
No, of course,
if it
it's very
was,
famous. Yeah.
yeah.
uh, and did you do sports when you were young?
Yeah, I did. In particular, I was very passionate about volleyball. I think I start getting to know volleyball because of some cartoon or something like this. And then I asked to my parents to try to play volleyball myself, and they asked to the team of one of the teams of my city. And they said, well, she's too young. She's at elementary school, so she will have to start first year of the college. But then I was really motivated, and I insisted, and my parents insisted because they could see that I was really into volleyball, even if I didn't try to play it before. And so they allowed me at the last year of elementary school, they allowed me to play in the team.
Ah,
And so I was super happy, and I continued until I moved for my university studies.
uh-huh. And music, do you play an instrument?
So I used it to play piano when I was younger, like a college. I still play a bit, but I'm not that good. I mean, I play from time to time when I go back to my family house where there is a piano, so I have fun a little bit playing.
Uh-huh. But
But I played for several years, and at some point, I don't know why I got more interested in other things. So I was going to stop. But my father is really into music, so he was really upset, and so we made a pact. And the pact was that he would stop smoking because he was really a hard smoker. He could smoke 3 packs of cigarettes, packets of cigarette per day, and I hated it. So he said, "Okay, I will stop smoking, but you continue playing piano." So we made a pact, and then I continued to play the piano, but I think it was, I mean, he didn't have enough motivation to stop. So because quitting from 3 packets a day to zero, it was really hard. So he started smoking, but without telling me. And that's one day I found some cigarettes in his car, and I said, "Oh, you're still smoking." And so that's when I decided, okay, now I quit
okay.
piano.
And what type of music do you like to listen? I mean, during that time and also nowadays.
I mean, I like to vary. When I was a teenager, I was really into kind of music like Radiohead, Massive Attack, grunge music like Nirvana or Pearl Jam, these
Mm.
kind of things. I would listen to almost everything, but that was really my obsession, let's say.
uh, and do you have any other interests like literature, art?
I really like art. This is something that I developed during my high school studies, thanks to a professor who was really passionate about art. And I really appreciated her way to explain us the history of art. And she made me appreciate a lot the modern art, starting from Impressionism and so on. So every time I go to a city, I try to go and see the most important museums of the city. And of course, in Paris, I have a lot of fun exploring the different museums we have here.
Do you like any particular style of art?
What I appreciate of modern art is the fact of giving a different perspective. So after photography was born, the art, so up to photography, let's say artists will be more technical. Like the aim of the artist was more to reproduce the reality. And after that, of course, the artist couldn't do better than photography to reproduce the reality. So they had to modify their style, and that's how all the new ways of like abstractism, expressionism, or impressionism as well were born, because they had to give to transmit to who was watching like some feeling. And this is really what I like, the fact that you can be in front of a picture and see different things, no? So based on your current emotions, etc. So this is what I like about modern art.
It seems that you are also a scout.
Yes, this is another activity I used to do. So I started when I was in college. I really had a lot of fun camping, learning how to cook with the fire and do constructions, all these kind of things. It was a lot of fun.
And since you're a scout, I wonder if you have ever attempted to solve the famous team orienteering problem in practice or in a research work.
Well, actually, I was doing it without knowing that it was an optimization problem, right? So yeah, this was something that was probably the link between scout and optimization. Yeah.
Yeah. And how the experience of being a scout helped you later in your career?
I think being a scout opened a lot my mind in general. I was exposed. So when you're very young, you are exposed to a different lifestyle, no? So you have to be more essential, like a lifestyle that is really essential, and to focus on what is important, let's say. I think this is also important in research. And then later on, I was exposed to different realities because when you're a scout and you're adult, you do volunteering for different associations, etc. And I think this opened a lot of my mind and made me interested in discovering the world. So more than what I was exposed when I was a kid, I think, because I mean I didn't travel a lot abroad when I was young. First trip abroad was when I was 16, I think, and then it took several years again to go back abroad. But I think opening my mind was something that the scout contributed.
So you seem to be a very adventurous person and like to be close to the nature, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really regenerating. Yes.
And how did you do in school? Were you a good student?
Yeah. I was a good student, and I had very good grades in math, in art, of course, because that was my passion. Yeah, in general, I was good. Maybe a little bit less in physics and science, strangely enough. But yeah, math was my passion since I would say since college. It was clear because I had a very good professor in math, and that I think I really appreciate her way of teaching. And she understood since then that I was really, I mean, I was good at math, and it was something that I could develop for my career.
Mm-hmm. So when you finished high school, you went straight to Bologna to continue with your studies, right?
Yeah, exactly. After high school, I had to decide what to do. The University of Bologna was close enough to Rimini that I could be there during weekdays and then go back to my family in the weekends. And then yeah, one of the questions that I had at that time was to what to do, because I knew that I really liked math, so I considered picking math as a degree, but then I decided finally to be more pragmatic and to study computer science engineering. Because usually, I mean, in Italy, you would think that after getting a degree in math, probably what you will do is to go to school to teach math to kids, etc. And I didn't feel that it was my future. So I wanted to have more doors open, and that's how I picked computer science engineering as a bachelor.
Mm-hmm. And when did you first learn about OR?
So I think it was the third year, if I'm not wrong, when I was exposed to R. There was a course of Silvano Martello that was really fundamentals of OR. Can't remember who was the teaching assistant, but it was for sure either Manuel or Manuel Uiori or Michele Monaci or one of these guys. And then there was Andrea Lodi, who was teaching a course in lab. So we will do computer to solve optimization problems. And both courses were really interesting for me.
Mm. Yeah, it's nice that that probably Manuel was one of the teaching assistants. Yeah, he's a close friend, and also
Yeah.
he was here on subject too. And I also had the chance to meet Michele Monaci, and he's a very nice guy too. So
Yes.
so what was your first OR project about?
Project. I would say the first real project that I did was for an internship that I did, supervised by Andrea Lodi. And he had some contacts with the ARPA, which is Regional Environmental Agency in the region of Bologna. And they wanted to optimize some processes that they had. Actually, when we went there, like because I was working with the internship was with another student, and when we went there, they didn't have a problem in mind that we could solve, etc. So what we had to do is to speak to people trying to identify some optimization problem to solve. And finally, it was interesting because we could find one. Like it was kind of a vehicle routing problem, actually, that they were not solving it optimally, let's say. So each center was organized independently, so they had a lot of things to optimize. But then I think they never applied our method, unfortunately, because I think there were some contracts going on and some things that were hard constraints, so they couldn't really exploit our work.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a nice experience in any case.
Did you have to write a sort of a bachelor thesis to graduate?
Yes. And after the experience, actually, this was before the experience of the internship, because the internship was during the master. So the bachelor thesis was not about, officially not about optimization, because I asked it to a professor in databases. But actually what it made me do is to design an algorithm to identify Pareto optimal queries.
Mm.
So actually it was linked. So you see, it's my destiny. Optimization, it's my destiny in some sense.
Mhm.
So the idea was that you had two criteria. So for example, you want to identify in the database the hotel that is cheapest but closest to the sea. And so you want to extract the non-dominated queries in the database.
Mm-hmm. Uh, but then, as you mentioned, you proceeded with the master's, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the computer science engineering master, where I had the chance to pick and decide which courses, the great majority of the courses that I wanted to do. And there were a lot of options concerning optimization. So I selected all of them because I really liked. So I had the chance to add as a professor Paolo Tot, Silvano Martello again, Andrea Lodi, and again as a teaching assistant Manuel and Michele.
Wow. And tell me about your master's project.
So the master thesis was about water network design. So after following all these courses and after the internship, I decided that I wanted to do OR. And my supervisors were Paolo Tot and Andrea Lodi, together with Cristiana Bragali, who is a hydraulic engineer of Bologna University. And she was the expert of the problem. So the idea was to decide the size of the pipes that you want to install in order to guarantee that you can distribute in a city drinkable water. And of course, there are a lot of physical constraints that are present. And among them, there is the Adzen-Williams equation, which is a ugly nonlinear equation, which I was supposed to deal with. And the first approach that we did for my master thesis was to linearize. Of course, coming from Bologna, we are a mixed integer linear programming group. And the first approach was linearize that constraint and hope that we could find good feasible solutions.
Mm-hmm. So you were exposed to a non-linear programming problem, but you tried to escape using the linearizations and things like that. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Right. But then, when did you finish your master's?
So I finished my master in March 2005. And then, of course, I didn't know what to do. So I was I was everybody, I was in school for all my life. And so I considered going in industry. And also Andrea asked me if I was interested in a PhD. Actually, if I have to admit, I didn't know at that time what a PhD was.
Really?
Because, yes, because I think I was the first of my family to get a master's degree. And my friends, were in the same situation. So I really didn't know what was the academic life. So finally, he explained to me, and I asked to also the PhD students that were in the lab, etc. So I was thinking about it, and then I got selected for an interview for McKinsey, because I sent a CV. So some of my friends sent a CV there. So
that is
why not?
In Bologna or in another town?
No, actually it was in Milan. So I went to Milan for the interview. Actually, the way they organized the interview is a little bit peculiar, in the sense that in the morning they were like a group of candidates and we made a written exam in some sense. So they gave us a case study, and they asked us some questions to answer in order to see how we were thinking, like our way of thinking, etc. And then a part of this group was admitted to the interview with the human resources people. I was one of them. So I stayed there, I think, more than 1 hour, half an hour speaking about my CV and my past experience. They were very interested in the internship that I did because they liked this idea of optimizing algorithms and all these kind of things. And then the second part, they gave me a case study, another case study, to again see how I was thinking, etc. And then after that, I was waiting for an answer, and I think after 1 week they called me and they told me, so your CV is very interesting, your background is very interesting for us, but we think that you are not motivated enough to go to industry. You are too motivated to stay in academia. So we think you should continue your studies, and then maybe you can get in touch later on with us if you're still interested in joining McKinsey. So at that point I said, okay, they know better than me that actually I'm really into academia, and maybe they're right. Maybe I should think about a PhD. And this is how I decided. Finally, I made my final decision.
Wow, that's interesting. So, yeah, I wanted to join the industry, but they said no, stay there.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they wanted to get rid of me. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But in the end, it turned out to be a very good piece of advice to you.
Yeah, I think it was very useful because I was very undecided. I mean, for me, it was a huge decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
You engage for 3 years and then you don't know. I mean, Andrea was really clear. He told me from the beginning that it was difficult to continue in academia after the PhD in Italy. So he told me that I would have to consider to move abroad after the PhD.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was not scared at that point. I said, okay, so I will continue what I'm passionate about, then we will see.
Mm-hmm. So you finally started your PhD in 2006?
Yes, because in Italy, we start the PhD 1st of January. So as I got my master degree in March, then I had to wait until January 2006 to start my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in September, I applied for a grant, and luckily I had it. And in the meantime, I continued working on water network design and on some other problems.
Mm-hmm. So what was your thesis about? The one that you got the prize for it?
So it was about mixed integer nonlinear programming. And probably, I mean, it because of my master thesis. So as you said, I got exposed to nonlinearities and these kind of challenging problems. And at that point, we tried to avoid the nonlinear problem by linearizing everything. But then in that period, Andrea Lodi was IBM Goldstein Fellow. So he got this prize. And he spent 1 year in T.J. Watson Research Center in close to New York. And at that time, the research group there, managed by John Lee, was working together with the researchers in Carnegie Mellon University to develop a MINLP, so mixed integer nonlinear programming solver that is called BOM-MIN. And Andrea was involved in this project, and at some point he told me, so I think we had it all wrong during your master thesis. We should try mixed integer nonlinear methods for that, because it's the natural way for modeling it. So what do you think about picking this topic as your PhD thesis? So we know nothing about this, but we will study together. So I thought, okay, but I think it's a good idea because it's a risky project, of course, but still it's really trendy, no? It's a hot topic these days, so maybe we can have nice contributions. And this is how everything started.
By the way, were you aware that you had such a distinguished group of professors there in Bologna?
No, I think, I mean, I didn't realize at the beginning, of course. I mean, you see that they're very good at teaching, they transmit a lot of passion, etc. So you think that they like what they do, etc. But I didn't really realize that they were, I mean, I was so lucky to be exposed to this nice and stimulating environment.
Uh-huh. And what were the most difficult moments during the PhD?
I would say that the second year was a little bit harsh, probably because in general, I mean, it's not just me. I think other colleagues told me that their second year was hard, because in the first year you're super excited, you're really motivated, etc. But then maybe, in my case, it was more because of some bad news that I had concerning submissions. So I had a tough rejection of a paper that we submitted to Info Journal Computing. And it was the paper that was of water network design and the mixed integer nonlinear approaches on this. So we had the first paper in a conference, and then we had an extended journal paper. I worked really hard for getting the results, for developing some things on BOM-MIN that were tailored for this problem. I thought we had excellent results because this was a mathematical optimization approach, and up to that moment, the literature was genetic algorithm or all these kind of things that were running for weeks, and our method was fast and could find good solutions. But we got a bad rejection, and I think it was tough for me to try again, have again motivation to go on.
But it was like rejected right away or after some round of revision?
After some round of revision. And this is even worse because at the beginning we had a major revision. So we took care, we thought carefully about every issue that was raised. And then one of the reviewer was not happy, and with not a lot of motivation, let's say, not a lot of explanation, he said, no, this paper has to be rejected. And so it was really not even, if you get a rejection, but you have constructive reviews, then you can at least see the reason why, etc. But in that case, it was really not explicable.
Mm-hmm. And did you submit somewhere else?
At least for me at that time. So we submitted to another journal. We submitted to Operations Research. We gave it a try. So we didn't believe that much to that journal, but at that point we wanted to try, and we were hoping for having an answer in a short time, because at that point it was like we waited for quite a while, and they immediately replied with a rejection, saying that the topic wouldn't really fit the journal, which was acceptable answer, and especially because we had it in 1 month, so I think it's reasonable. And then the funny thing was that they were suggesting us to send the paper to Info Journal on Computing because it was the perfect fit for our paper. And so we were like, yes, actually we thought that it was the perfect fit, but the editorial board don't. So that's so then finally we published it in Optimization and Engineering, but I was already a permanent researcher when it was published.
Wow! So it took a long time to get accepted. Yeah. And what did you do to overcome such difficult periods?
So yeah, it was not easy. What I tried to do is to evacuate the stress by taking a little bit time for a little bit of time for me, like sports, like art, things that I mean could clear my mind in some sense. And then I think that I was lucky enough to have an experience abroad during my PhD that like motivated me back again on track.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that shortly. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so many talented OR names came from Bologna, like you, for example. And I know you guys had great supervision and so on. But I feel that there might be an additional ingredient to your success. Would that be the famous corridor?
Probably because actually, yeah. So during my first year, my desk was on the corridor, the famous Bologna corridor, but not. It was not the desk of Alberto, Andrea, and so on. It was a desk that was in another like space in the corridor.
So it was not one of the lucky desks.
Not one of the lucky desks. So then after the first year I moved in the lucky desk. So maybe if I was in the lucky desk from the beginning, the info journal computing paper would have been published, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but I asked that because Andrea Lodi mentioned when I talked to him that the fact that you work in such a chaotic environment, because it was like in a corridor, many people going back and forth, made him more resilient in the sense that he could actually, for example, write codes in the airport, and you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you also had this experience of being able to now work in unfavorable circumstances.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. When I watched the episode with Andrea, I thought, yes, absolutely. I do agree that it helped us a lot to be very focused and to filter everything that we do not need to be attentive to when we are really focused on something. So yeah, I still have that gift. So even if I have my office, I can close the door and be quiet. But still, if I'm in airports or if my kid is around the house and screaming or whatever situation, I can focus and forget about everything that is around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe my theory could be right about the influence of the corridor and giving the extra edge for you guys to achieve really good results. So you mentioned that you spent the time abroad. So you went to the U.S. doing your PhD, right?
Yes, I had the chance to spend a summer at IBM TJ Watson Research Center, which was where Andrea was worked for 1 year. So as I said, he was working in the group of John Lee, and I was working with John on the water network design problem when we proposed me to join the group for a summer internship. Of course, I accepted immediately because I thought it was an excellent experience for me, and of course it was great to be there to work with John. I worked as well with Andreas Vector, who was developing IPOpt at that time. And I'm still working on the topic that we worked on. We started working on that at that period.
Mm-hmm. So how was the experience? Like, you went from Europe to the U.S., North America, different environment. Was it easy for you to adapt?
Let's say there were tough moments at the beginning. So first of all, it was my second time in the US. I went before for a conference, but of course, when you're there just for 1 week, it was in Miami. It was very different environment. New York is a very special city, which I adore. In particular, an episode was really a little bit weird, let's say. At the first day, I arrived, I would say, early in the afternoon. And of course, I was jet lagged. I was so tired that I went to bed very early. Like it was late afternoon, let's say. I was living in an apartment, a small apartment in a residence close to Columbia University, which was very secured. You could have access to the building only if you had if you showed the ID, etc. So I was really like sleeping hardly when at some point I heard some noise coming from the window, and I realized that someone was trying to get into my apartment from the window. So I didn't even realize where I was. I was screaming and say who you are, but in Italian, because I didn't really realize that I was in the US, no, that I should speak it like English. But and the guy said, sorry, and then he left. And I was really like there wondering, oh my God, really scared. Who is this guy? How did he manage to come here? And then I got a call. Because we had a fixed phone, like a land phone in each of the apartments.
Yeah,
so
landline.
I answered. Line phone, yeah. I mean, I was surprised because who can call me now here? I don't know. And anyway, it was the guy. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm your neighbor. Actually, I forgot the badge to get into my apartment, and I didn't realize that it was not my apartment. I tried to get inside my apartment from the window because I don't want to pay extra money because I forgot the badge. I was like, I was surprised, and I said, okay, and I closed. So on Monday, I started working, so I told the story to the colleagues, among which John. And he said, well, welcome to New York. Like as implying that actually this is a standard New York story, But actually, finally, it was really like a student that I think he was using the apartment for sleeping when hosting other people in his apartment. And then
Okay.
we became friends. So nothing worrying happened, but still, I mean, at the beginning, the first weekend, I was not very. I was really a little bit worried, let's say, about this.
Right. So you've learned many things during that internship, right? In New York.
Yes. Yeah, I think it also that internship was very useful and also influenced the topic, the research topic that I followed in the following, because in that case, what we did was to focus on a class of MINLPs with some particular mathematical properties and devise a global optimization method for it. And this is actually what I did in the following years. I liked this a lot, this approach a lot.
So you completed your PhD in 2009, and then you returned to the US, but not to the same place, right?
No, I had the chance to get a short postdoc at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The contract was for 6 months, and I had the chance to work with Jeff Linderoth and Jim Lutke. And it was a fantastic experience. Of course, very different with respect to New York, like also from a cultural viewpoint, let's say, because the people and the way of living, like lifestyle, etc., it's very different in New York and Wisconsin. Both were a fantastic experience.
And what did you do there in terms of research?
I studied the pooling problem. It's a problem that was introduced in the 70s, and it's very challenging. There is only continuous variables. The only non-linearities that are present are products of two variables, so bilinear terms. But still, it's a very challenging problem. And actually, until 2010, nobody proved the complexity of this problem. So the first proof of complexity was found in 2010. And yeah, at that point, I studied the variant of pooling problem with binary variables, and we published a IPCO paper, conference paper in IPCO. And then in the following years, we continued the collaboration with Jim and Jeff and published more recently another paper together with Jonas, who was a PhD of the group of Bologna, who visited me for a while.
Yeah, you had really good company, both in Italy and the US.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I was so lucky.
Yeah. Did you look for a position there, or your main goal was to return to Europe?
Yeah, for personal reasons, my goal was to go back to Europe. I liked the fact of having a short experience in the US, but I thought that I could see myself on a long term more in Europe, also to be closer to my family, and also, I don't know, maybe the lifestyle, everything. I could see myself in the long term in Europe, let's say.
Right.
This is why I went back to Italy and I started looking for a permanent position around Europe.
But you were offered a postdoc position at Berkeley.
Yes. Actually, I couldn't accept the offer, and it was really a pity. I'm still thinking about it, and it would have been a great experience, I think. But in the same period, I got the permanent position that I accepted in France at CNRS. So as that was really my dream position with only research duties, no teaching, in a country that is not too far from Italy and that I like, I thought, okay, so this is an occasion that I cannot miss, so I have to give up on the postdoc in Berkeley.
So that's how you ended up in France.
That's how I ended up in France, yes. At that, when I was a PhD student, I started working with Leo Liberti, who was already in France. And he told me that there were some positions in France, and as I said, I could see myself living in France. So I applied. I applied to 3 positions. I only got 1, but it was enough. And so I moved to Paris in 2011.
Right. So as we've been discussing, you are one of the brave people from our community that enjoys solving mixed integer nonlinear programming problems. Tell me about your most relevant work in the field, that, I mean, after your PhD and onwards.
So I think, so it depends on if we are thinking about methodological or applied work, because I worked on both aspects. From an applied viewpoint, there was a paper that I published with Andrea Lodi, Silvano Martello, and a colleague in electrical engineering that was aimed at solving a problem that is called hydro unit commitment, which is energy production from hydro plants. So you have to optimize the daily production. And there is a function that is very ugly, nonlinear, of course. And at that point, for that specific application, a linearization that we invented was really effective. Years after we found out, we had a kind of explanation why for the water network design linearization was not working, and for the hydrogen commitment it was working. It took us few years to understand, but I think that is a kind of relevant problem in industry, and I had a lot of positive feedbacks, and also I got some projects with the companies because of that paper. So that I think helped me a lot, and it's a contribution that in practice is very relevant. From a methodological viewpoint, I would say the paper with Jim, Jeff, and Jonas was one of the papers that I think is relevant from a methodological viewpoint, from a theoretical viewpoint. Maybe it's not that known, so there are other papers of mine that are more known and more cited, but still I really like that results. Yeah.
Right. In terms of algorithms, problem solving, what you guys usually develop to try to find, the optimal solutions when possible, and when you're dealing with non-convex functions, try to find good solutions?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we have different tools with respect to mixed integer linear programming people. When I was working with mixed integer linear programming, I was using a lot of C++. Then when I moved more on the nonlinear side, I started using a lot MPO, which is a modeling language that I really like, because it helps a lot to try different methods and different solvers by just giving you the opportunity to write the model, the mathematical model, in a very clear and straightforward syntax. And it's very important to use this or other. There is GAMS, there is also JUMP now for Julia. It's very important to use modeling languages in mixed integer linear programming, because the solvers usually need not only the expression of the function that you have, but as well the Jacobian of the objective function and the Hessian of the constraints. So first order and second order information in order to be more performing. And if you use a C++, then you have to code, so to obtain Hessians and Jacobian by hand, and then code everything. And you can imagine that you can make a lot of mistakes, and you can create a lot of bugs. So the modeling languages have some tools inside that they automatically compute Jacobian and Hessians and send the information to the solver that they call.
And what about the solvers?
Solvers, there are plenty of them now. When I started, there were just a few. I used a lot BOM-MIN that solves convex MINLPs. Exactly, but is a heuristic method for non-convex MINLPs. And then also in the same project, it was developed the global solver Quen that solves globally, to global optimality MINLP with the non-convexities. But there is SKIP, which was extended, which for MILPs, that was extended to mixed integer nonlinear programming of very general classes of mixed integer nonlinear programming.
Mosaic too?
Mosaic too, yes, there are plenty of them. Baron, of course, is very good. Is one of the first global optimization solvers. And there are new every year.
Yeah, I saw in your CV that you have collaborated with a couple of open source software for the CoinOR project, right?
Yes. When I was PhD student, I worked on both BOM-MIN and Quen. Min because I used it for solving the water network design problem, and I developed some specific options in order to be more efficient on that problem. When same thing, so I developed a few things, and also it was Rose actually the other solver in which I made a few contribution, which was developed in École Polytechnique, which is actually the group that I joined later on. And this is the development in Rose were more because of the work on feasibility pump extended to general non-convex MINLPs.
Okay. And what do you see as future research directions in this field?
I still think there is a lot to do in mixed integer nonlinear programming because we are far from being, the solvers and the method are far from being as efficient as mixed integer linear programming. I think one of the key aspects is to identify classes of MINLPs that are recurrent in practical problem, and to design tailored methods for this, which then can be also added to generic MINLP solver. So, for example, if you have a specific class of MINLP, you can devise cuts, so valid inequalities or all these kind of things, and integrating them in the solver then can speed up a lot the methods. As actually it was done for mixed integer linear programming. I think there is still a lot to do on this side. And then more recently, I've been working a little bit on hybrid methods that combine mixed integer nonlinear programming and machine learning. I'm not an expert in machine learning, but I think machine learning can be useful in optimization and vice versa. So I think that there are complementary specificity that can be exploited.
Okay. Did you have the chance to see any of your work put into practice?
Yeah, actually, the work that I was mentioning on hydrogen commitment. So in that case, actually, last year, I was contacted by a company that asked me to do some consulting for them because they wanted to use that method on their software in order to use the method to approximate better the nonlinearities that they have. So it was I was very happy to see that it can be useful in practice.
So could you comment about your supervision style?
That's an interesting question. I think my supervision style is not one unique supervision style, and probably it changed since the beginning. So when I started my position in France, I had several students. I had the chance to co-supervise several students with Leo Liberti. And but at that time I had a lot of time. So I don't know if in Brazil it's the same, but in France, when you're a permanent researcher, after a while they put you in several committees, etc., and you do not have time anymore to work with the students. So at the beginning, what I did was to try to create, let's say, like a nice environment. For example, organizing reading groups. So when there was a student that was starting working on a topic and I would read a book, everybody interested in that book will meet in a room and we would read together chapters of that book, like, and then discussing, etc. So I think it was a nice way to get all the group involved in one topic. Now that I have less time, let's say that, and also because of COVID, I think I changed my supervision style, and I'm more keen to weekly meetings. So trying to have fixed weekly meetings with the postdoc students in order to have a fixed day and find the time for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of your students, I suppose, they might have come originally from the regular interlinear programming background. So I wonder what will be the difference when solving a mixed nonlinear integer problem and a mixed integer linear problem. I mean, in terms of modeling methodology, what are the differences that you think are the most obvious?
So I teach mixed integer nonlinear programming in the second year of the master here. And what I usually do to let them understand the differences and what they have to take care of or keep in mind, especially, is that the things that there are a few things that you do not have to give for granted anymore. So, for example, I think that the great difference is between non-convex MINLPs and linear, no? And or convex in any case. So the fact that you might have a local minima that is not a global minima is really changes everything, no? The way you should think, etc. So you have to be careful, because sometimes what will be a bound for the convex case will not be a bound for the non-convex case. So this is really tricky, I think. Here you have to be in the mindset where you do not give for granted anymore these kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And regarding algorithms, if one codes, for example, branch and cut algorithms, you can resort to callbacks from Cplex and things like that. But what about the nonlinear problems? Do you have any additional tool to go for the advanced exact algorithms, or you have to rely mostly on the modeling aspect?
It's a lot on the modeling, and I think, you can add also for adding valid inequalities, etc. It's a lot on modeling. But then, depending on, I'm more thinking about non-convex MINLPs, which is the more complex one. Then, of course, you have some classes of convex MINLPs where you can do a lot of things. So convex MIQCPs or things like this that are closer to mixed integer linear programming. The thing I think that what changes a lot also in methods, etc., is that the way the solvers and the algorithm represent your problem internally. So if you think about a mixed integer linear program or also a quadratic one, you can just store coefficients of your matrices, so the explicit values, etc. And on the contrary, on the mixed integer nonlinear problem, you have to store the functions themselves. And what the solver do usually for doing this is having stored what are called expression trees.
Mm-hmm.
That are trees that represent the function that you have in your model. So one of the trees for each of the function that appears in the constraints or objective function, where the nodes are operators, coefficients, variables, all these kind of things. So that makes the problems very complicated, because then there are automatic reformulations inside in order to make the generic non-convex MINLP MINLP that the solver can treat.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes things a bit complicated, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I see. So let's change topics. I usually ask the female guests about gender issues and things like that. So and being a woman in our field can be challenging at times. Have you experienced any negative events in this sense during your career?
Yeah, something. Yes. I think I was lucky enough to not being exposed to gender issues up to university, I think, in the sense that my family and friends never told me, oh no, you do not have to do math because girls are not good at math, or engineering is not for girls, or things like this, which I think is super important because probably I arrived at the university with already like my assurance, about the fact that I could do things that also boys could do, or things like this. Then negative episodes, which were at that point surprising because I was not really exposed to these kind of things before. I could recall that some professor, not in OR, I want to stress this because our group in Bologna was fantastic, and there were no gender issues with them at all.
Mm-hmm.
So other professors from other groups would come and talk with me. For example, after the lecture, it happened that I was drinking coffees with colleagues, and our professor would come and say, "Oh, okay, so did you?" We're speaking about the fact that I was just finishing teaching for the day, and he said, "Oh, what did you do during teaching? Did you change your dress?" So making reference at. I don't know if it's the same in Brazil, but there are shows in which there is a male that conducts the show, and they present the main presenter, and then there are women that are close and they are just not speaking, and they just exchange dresses, So it was really, I don't know, I was really surprised, and I didn't even react because I was so surprised, but made me think that it was really, like a bad attitude, because I was trying to do my best to pass my knowledge to the students, be professional, etc. And then these old-fashioned guys would come and make me feel like if I was just, good for just changing dresses or things like this. It was really unpleasant, let's say.
I see. Yeah, that is definitely very unpleasant. I hope you didn't have any other experience like that.
Yeah, actually, this was just an example because it happened also that, as you know, my desk was in the corridor. I could hear people speaking in the corridor. And there was another professor who was speaking to one colleague, talking about me, like, again, same attitude as I was a kind of sugar or something like this, which was really unpleasant. He didn't know I was there. The other professor of the previous episode was really speaking to me like as if it was normal to make a comment like this. And I didn't say anything on that case as well, because I thought that in any case, if it was someone who was not part of my life, etc., and it didn't influence my career, or I didn't really matter what he was thinking. But I feel that if younger, maybe a little bit less weaker students will hear something like this, it will be more affected than me, and I think it's I hope that things are changing now. Yeah. It's just old-fashioned,
completely necessary way. And degrading at some point. And so you became a mom last year.
Yes.
So how do you balance between maternity and work?
This is a tough question. I will say that right now I feel that I'm less productive than before. As my son has slightly more than 1 year, I feel that I really want to spend with him as much time as possible. So I force myself not to work before he goes to, like in the evening before he goes to bed and in the weekend, which changes because before he was born, I used to work in the evenings and in the weekends. So I feel that I'm less productive, but for the moment, I think it's worth it to give him priority and maybe later on I will try to, I mean, I will find a good balance and to be more organized than now and manage everything together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really a matter of juggling in between
Yeah.
activities, and it's very demanding. I can only imagine how tough it can be for you to keep up the good work and also spend a lot of time, quality time with your family. It's
Yeah.
very challenging. Yeah.
It's challenging, but of course, I mean, I cannot complain because I'm lucky. I have a family, I have a beautiful son, and I have a job that I love. So it's, everything is a great pleasure to juggle between
Yeah.
activities.
Right. So, Claudia, it was lovely to talk to you. I enjoyed a lot, and I really appreciate for you to have spent some time to be here. So, grazie mille.
Obrigada. Thank you very much, Anand. Actually, I want to also thank you for the service that you're giving to the community because I think it's a great idea that you had. And I know that it's very time demanding and you're doing it in a very professional way. So thank you very much for this service. And I really enjoy all the interviews that I watched.
Thank you so much for your very kind words. So, if you want to visit Brazil and João Pessoa, please don't hesitate to contact me. And just in case you're passing by, we can maybe arrange for you to come and.
Actually, I'm supposed to come to Brazil in February, so I
Ah,
hope that maybe we can make it.
yeah, yeah. Why not? Let's plan it. So, Claudia, once again, thank you so much, and talk to you soon. Ciao.
Thank
Bye.
you. Ciao.